We have a new president, President Joe Biden. And, he's got a lot of states to look after, one of those states being Massachusetts. And the one thing about Massachusetts is Massachusetts loves talking about Massachusetts.
Well, why shouldn't we? We're the best Commonwealth in the nation. We have the most presidents. We have the most of everything. I mean, we're not doing so good in a couple of categories, but overall, when it comes to sending people to Washington, D.C., we're the leaders. Joe Biden is looking to tap Massachusetts folks to help fuel his administration and get his policies enacted.
And he's bringing some people that he likes from Massachusetts. Who's he bringing up for his administration?
It is a very long list, and it's wreaking havoc in all sorts of things. And as Gina McCarthy, the climate czar, said, it's a big day for Boston every day.
Thank you. It's a big day for Boston every day.
And I might just take out my Revere accent for a ride here to make sure that everyone knows how the accent of Massachusetts and Boston is going to be all over the administration. For one,
we can't escape it, Sue. We can't escape it.
We're everywhere. For one, of course, everyone's talking about Mayor Marty Walsh, who is in line to become the Secretary of Labor. He's on his way. There's also folks, like I said, Gina McCarthy, who is from Boston. She's going to be the climate czar. And former Secretary of State and Massachusetts Senator John Kerry. He's also going to be involved in climate work. There's a slew of people who are coming from the medical world, from MGH, that are going to sit on the COVID-19 advisory board, as well as folks like Annie Tomasini. She is going to be the director of Oval Office Operations. She's from West Roxbury, a Boston Latin native and a Boston University basketball star. Deputy Chief of Staff Jen O'Malley Dillon, another Boston native. I could go on and on and on with the number of people from Massachusetts or who have Massachusetts connections who are going to be in the Biden administration.
Since we're re-entering the Paris Agreement, how's that going to affect Massachusetts specifically?
Yeah, I know we've had a lot going on recently, but remember Superstorm Sandy that, just totally devastated the East Coast? Massachusetts and Boston was spared from a lot of that damage, but right after that, there was a survey done about what would have happened to the Boston seacoast if Superstorm Sandy hit us. Now, we know we're going to get another storm like that, and much of Boston and Cambridge would be underwater, and that really lit a fire under folks about what kind of things we need to do to make sure we are taking action against climate change, both reducing our carbon footprint and preparing our infrastructure for that. As soon as we entered the Paris Climate Agreement, things got better for Boston and for the Massachusetts seacoast. So one thing you can immediately see from a Biden administration is that climate action and funding for Massachusetts is definitely going to be on the front burner.
That's great, because there's a lot of construction at the seaport, and I don't want to see that underwater. I want to see everything high and dry.
Yeah, well, that will probably be underwater, but we're also looking at places like Moakley Park along South Boston, so that we expect it's going to flood, so we build it so it floods. Morrissey Boulevard, it seems, has been underwater more than it's been above water. So I think now that most people are agreeing that climate change is a reality, we can look to the federal government to actually help with the funding and infrastructure and planning that coastal cities like Boston are going to need if we're going to survive through the next 100 years.
And you mentioned that we have a lot of top medical minds coming from Massachusetts, and I know Massachusetts got hit hard during the pandemic, and we're still struggling with that. So how does a Biden administration affect Massachusetts through medicine and technology?
Well, one of the things that, we haven't been able to talk about because of COVID and the pandemic is how much research we do here in Massachusetts, between the biolab in the South End and out in the University of Massachusetts and Amherst. Lots of federal funding goes into making sure that we are on the cutting edge of finding what the next virus that might cause the pandemic is, or looking for the cure for cancer, which we know is important to President Joe Biden. He was in charge of the moonshot to cure cancer while he was Obama's vice president. So we can look to our hub of technology and medical innovation to get a lot of federal grants and money and attention as soon as we get through this pandemic a bit further.
There's a lot of differences between Biden and Trump, their hair color for one, but also immigration. You can't get any more different. And I know Boston's a sanctuary city. How's the Biden administration looking on that topic?
So it's going to be a lot messier than people think. Okay, first of all, a bit of history. The Obama administration was not great on a number of immigration issues, and immigration traditionally has been a very difficult issue to reconcile both for the Democrats and the Republicans, which is why it's still a mess decades and decades after it's come to the attention that we need to fix it. The Biden administration obviously rolled back the so-called Muslim ban immediately, but we're also looking at deportations of Haitians back to Haiti, which is also disturbing for the Boston area because of our very vibrant and big Haitian community here. So it's a bit of a mixed bag on the Biden administration when it comes to immigration. He will be able to undo some of the things that he thinks were wrong with the Trump administration's policy, but at the same time, there's no quick and easy fix. Having said that, though, there might be an appetite in Congress to actually get sweeping reforms towards our immigration policies on a federal level, so therefore we can all be on the same page about what we should and shouldn't be doing when it comes to immigration.
Obviously, Joe Biden's an interesting player when it comes to police reform, which plays into the Black Lives Matter movement. I know he's got good relationships with police unions, but he's also really trying to work with the black community. Do you think he's going to try to bring them together?
So Joe Biden, who is not the most progressive person ever, and certainly not the most progressive Democrat ever, may actually be the right person for this right time to bring some reconciliation. His support within the black community, which was essential to getting him elected, is well earned and he's well respected there. He also is a very pro-union guy and certainly can relate to a number of the police unions across the country, which some see as a barrier to real reform within police departments. So we may actually see someone who is able to act as a liaison between the justice community looking for reforms in police departments and the police unions who have traditionally been a barrier to that.
Which is good because Boston has a very troubled racial history, and any steps that we're taking to solve these problems are steps in the right direction.
The federal government can issue at any moment an executive order, which you've heard about, or guidance. And if the Biden administration decides to issue guidance regarding police reform, that's something that the cities and states will take seriously. I'm not saying that he will, but there's an enormous amount of power that the president has that he can use in order to help shape local policies. And here we are in Boston on the verge of having a brand new mayor for the first time in a little while. And obviously racial justice and police issues are front and center in this race, and it's helpful to those candidates and for folks seeking justice to have someone in the White House who agrees with them at least directionally.
And this pandemic has changed so many things, education being one of them, and a big topic is student debt. There's been a lot of talk about student debt forgiveness, and Massachusetts has a lot of top colleges. How does the Biden administration play into that?
Yeah, right. So a couple of issues with Massachusetts. One, we have a huge number of colleges and universities, and those are businesses, right? They're nonprofits, but they're businesses, and they want to make sure that they can continue to attract students so they can continue to run their businesses. And we have a number of students who come here to go to college and then stay here in Massachusetts, and that helps our economy grow. Joe Biden never said that he was on board with loan forgiveness when it comes to student debt. However, he also tends to say things before he's supposed to, and he recently indicated that he might be okay with forgiving $10,000 worth of federal student loans. So some people are hopeful that that means he will. But this is one area where liberals and progressives in Massachusetts and in New England are going to be really pushing Joe Biden to the left to reduce and relieve some of this student debt. But it has a huge impact on the economy in Massachusetts because we have so many students living here, we have so many people who graduated and stayed here, and we have so many schools that it is just essentially connected to our economy.
Infrastructure. There's a lot of things that need to be built. There's a lot of things that need to be maintained. How does the Biden administration play into that?
Listen, Massachusetts is one of the oldest commonwealths in the nation, and some of the streets we have are very old. Some of our systems are, basically ancient. Infrastructure, dams, roads, bike lanes, all the things that you think about how we get around and what keeps us safe have been crumbling for decades, and the country, and Massachusetts in particular, is in desperate need of a relief package for infrastructure that would give federal money to the states to work on the projects that we need. That would be good for our climate preparedness. It would also create jobs, right? Remember the Big Dig? Some people don't like to remember the Big Dig because of how much it costs, but it created a bunch of jobs for people, and now you can get from Framingham to Kelly's on Revere Beach in just a couple of minutes, which is really what the whole key was. Listen, infrastructure is something that Republicans and Democrats and all 50 states can agree on. It's why, and I hate to keep going back to the past, it's why President Trump kept saying that he was going to have Infrastructure Week, but we never got it. So this should be an easy layup for the Biden administration and for Congress and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, to come up with a package that has enough money so the states and commonwealths and districts and territories can all fix our bridges and roads and get ready again to prepare ourselves for the climate changes that are coming. There's a lot that needs to be fixed, but Massachusetts and Boston are looking optimistically forward. People like to dump on Massachusetts a lot as this progressive, crazy state across the country. Remember, we have more registered independents in this state than we do Democrats and Republicans. And for the most part, not always, we tend to do things right and smart, and people are generally happier here in Massachusetts. So I'm happy to spread the joy to the rest of the nation via our best and brightest out of Massachusetts.